Well, hello everybody. It's Pastor Phil here at St. Andrew Lutheran Church. I'm very happy to spend some time with our congregation president, Mike Quinn, who I'm going to be, Mike and I are going to have conversation this morning about the future and just about things. I also wanted to get to know Mike. We don't get a chance to really spend too much time introducing our leaders, at the church. And so I thought this would be a good idea for Mike and I to talk over some of the things that are on our minds as far as the church goes, and also for you to get a chance to know Mike a little bit. So thank you, Mike, for coming in this morning so that we can kind of share a little bit. And what I wanted to do was maybe just ask if you could give us a little snippet, the short version of Mike Quinn's life, not, like maybe a little career or whatever you'd like to share.
Well, let's see. My life started in August 15th, 1941, and I grew up like most of us grew up. I went into the Air Force and spent 4 years, 3 years in Bangor, Maine, 1 year on the Aleutian Islands, which was another story by itself. When I got out of the service, I went to work for a VFW club as the manager. And one of the men that came in to the club worked for UPS. And I happened to ask him one day, are they hiring? And he said, yes. So I went out, applied for a job. 2 days later, I went to worked for UPS for 26 years, probably 26 of the hardest and happiest years of my life because I really love my job and it's a wonderful company to work for. Retired, came to Las Vegas. This is kind of a funny story. We took a snow shovel and decided when somebody asked us, what's that for? We knew that's a place that we wanted to be, to get away from the cold and the snow. So we love Las Vegas, and it's never had to look back. We've been out here as of April 24 years. So
yeah. It's 24 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Las Vegas is, in my opinion, probably the best place for particularly retired people to live. Mm-hmm. Not only because of the tax base and all that kind of stuff, but just because there's so many things for people to do, not only just right in Las Vegas, but within a 4 or 5 hour drive, you can go most any place.
Right.
One of the most beautiful, obviously, is in Utah. So we're just happy to be here. The other thing that happened while we were here, we were 11, almost 12 years ago, we were looking for a church. Somebody suggested St. Andrews. Didn't know anything about St. Andrews. We came on a Sunday morning and came in and knew almost instantly because of the warmth, the feeling of love from everybody in the church, pastor himself, his sermon, which was and has and continues to be outstanding, not to try and butter you up, Pastor, but...
No, of course not. Yeah. Let's hear more.
But we knew that God said, this is your church, and we've been here ever since, and just absolutely loving it. This probably, of all the churches that we've been involved with, St. Andrews is the warmest and kindest, and you can tell that the word love here is really meaningful.
Meaningful, yeah. Very good.
I can't imagine anyone who would walk through our doors would not feel the same way. Yeah. If they do, then we're missing something.
Right, right. Yeah, we want to make sure and always be welcoming in that sense.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mike. Glad that we are glad you and Carolyn made your way here and that God led you here. And as a person who's doesn't like to just sit in a pew, Sunday morning you got involved in the church in a variety of ways, and most recently you've been president of our congregation. So as you're working with our council, what's that experience been like so far?
I have, in my church life, been involved with other church councils, and I have to say that working with the council here at St. Andrews is probably the best counsel, the best people, the best that they are concerned for the church. They're concerned about doing what they can to make sure that the people of the church know that they can come to anybody on the council for any questions, and we'll always try and answer their questions. Myself, I'm always available to anybody that needs a question or just a concern, and if I don't know the answer, I know who to go to get the answer. He's sitting right here, so.
That's a pretty tall order.
But I have felt, and I told Pastor this a couple of years ago, that I really believe that God has moved me in the way that He wanted me to be president of this congregation. And I am so absolutely thrilled and blessed that came to pass. And I plan to be here as long as you have me.
Well, we appreciate that, Mike, and I appreciate the leadership that you're providing for us too on the council. The other thing that I thought would be helpful for us to discuss is the notion of when do you think we'll get back together? I get that question a lot, and I think people kind of want a date, and we've been hesitant to kind of schedule that because we just don't know yet. And so I think that even though we're saying we don't know we're going to get back together, we can be confident we will. But my guess is the place is going to have to look a little different. We're going to have to do things a little bit differently when we do get back together. And what are some of the changes that you've heard that we should be talking about?
Well, first of all, our obviously everybody's concern is everybody. I believe that when the time comes that we can come back to a service, we'll probably only be able to have 50, maybe 75 people at a time.
That's to keep the distance,
To keep,
right? Yep.
Yep. And I believe that what that means for us is probably more work for Pastor in the fact that we'll probably have to have 3, maybe even 4 services to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to come to service. We probably won't be able to have music for quite a while because choirs, unfortunately, sit close together. When you sing, you kind of have a tendency to spit, which is,
That's right.
that's full of germs in itself. And so we won't be having a choir music, which is unfortunate because I know we all love the choir. And I know Michelle and all the choir folks are very dismayed that they won't be able to get together. But a couple of the other things that we'll probably have to do without, which I'm personally going to miss a lot, is our social hour.
Right.
Coffee and goodies are things that get handled, and that's what we want to avoid.
Exactly. Yeah. There. I know that we are working also with the ELCA, the larger church, and our local synod, the Grand Canyon Synod, with listening very carefully to some of their suggestions and so forth. And they're not suggesting we get back together at any time immediately, not in the very near future. They said you really have to let some time go. And things like social hour would not be advised at this point, especially open food that's handled by so many people. That's just not a good idea at this point for us. And I miss that too, because that's always the time when you can kind of go around and check in with people, and so I miss that. And I'm sure that the day will come when we can get back to that, but it'll be a while. And in the interim, we'll have to just kind of, take it easy. And the other thing I think we will have to insist on is the whole notion of wearing masks when we come into church. And I think people have said, well, don't we have the freedom not to wear a mask? And I don't think so in this context.
No.
Right.
I would like to think that all of us are concerned about others besides ourselves. And wearing a mask is simply showing your concern for the other people that are around us. I mean, my personal opinion is I don't particularly care liking wearing masks either.
Yeah.
But I when I go to the grocery store, for an example, I dread putting that mask on, but I do.
Yeah, me too.
Because I know it's a safe thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
Is it comfortable? Not necessarily, but I know that I would rather wear a mask than take a chance on.
Yeah, that's the thing. And one of the big things, that Luther was very adamant about was that if you're going to love God, if you're going to love Christ, you have to learn how to love Christ in your neighbor. So, and he has this cute story about, he said usually it's women who say, oh, if I were there the night Jesus was born in the stable, And he said, I'll hear the women say, oh, I would change the baby's diapers, I would coddle the baby, I would comfort the baby. And then he says, and you can do this in your neighbor, because Christ is there too.
Sure.
So if we're going to love our neighbor, I think it's really incumbent upon us to take as many precautions as possible, even if it's uncomfortable, like wearing a mask. So I think that probably will be a given when we do get back together. And I think we will find that we will have extra masks, available if people don't have one. I mean, fresh masks, of course,
Right.
not used ones or something like that. We will have masks available, but I think, and it's not unusual for us to say this is really a necessity at this point. Only because every once in a while I'll hear somebody say, well, I'm not afraid of any virus, but that's not the point. The point is, if I have something, even though I'm not afraid of a virus,
Right.
I could be giving it to someone else. That's why the mask protects me from hurting you.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly.
And that's the most important thing. And if I'm going to love my neighbor, that's one of the ways that I can do it in this new context, basically, that we're kind of living in.
I think a couple of things that I have, questions that I've been asked as far as communion and collection. Mm-hmm. Communion is something that we have not put an exact handle on as yet, as far as I know, because somehow we have to come up with a way that not as least hands as possible that handle it. And as far as the offering is concerned, there's a couple of ways that we're thinking about. The pastor could probably explain a little bit more than I can, but I think that the congregation can be assured that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that these are as safe as we can make them.
Exactly, right. And we're getting a lot of guidance from the Synod as well as the larger church, the ELCA. We're getting a lot of guidance as to how these things happen. Most likely, offering plates will be a thing of the past, because by the time, think about it, on a Sunday morning, an Easter Sunday morning, if we have 250 people in this congregation, by the time the offering plates gets to you, 120 people have already touched it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and we do that without thinking about it, right? But this whole virus thing has kind of brought that to the fore. So we will change some of these things. We'll probably have an offering basket in the back, that people can put their offerings in and so forth, much like we do on the special holidays, like Good Friday and so forth. Good. Well, and so I've been trying to counsel with people. I mean, I don't do a lot of counseling, but when I'm talking to people on the phone, they'll ask questions about this. And one of the things is you can feel kind of a little bit on the depressed side, not getting together and so forth, and kind of being stuck in our homes. And the question was asked, boy, do we still have reasons to celebrate? I mean, can we still be people who are celebration people? And I think we can, because God's presence is always there. Coronavirus or not, God's presence is always there. The other thing to remember too, I think that I have to remind myself, is the church is not this building. This is merely a facility that's been blessing and so forth, but this is not the church. The church is people. It's our congregation that's out there. We're still the church. We're still the church together, and we're still the church for the sake of the world. And God has called us not to run in fear of this whole thing, but to continue to be the church. I'm particularly blessed because on Mondays and Wednesdays, as you know, we've been collecting food for LSSN. And a lot of people have been driving by, offering their food that we take down to LSSN, as well as their offerings for the church, to keep so that we can continue to keep our staff going. And we have not had to fire anybody yet. People have been generous with this. We don't think we're going to go get loans from the government at this point, because the money's probably gone by now anyway.
Yes.
But we wanted to say thank you to everybody, because our congregation has been really generous with this. And so that they should know that we're still working here. Our hours, by the way, are 9 to 12, Monday through Thursday, with those collection days on Monday and Wednesday as far as LSSN goes, where you can stop by. And by the way, anytime 9 to 12, people can stop by the church if they want to just say hello. We always keep our distance. We always wear masks when somebody comes in, that we haven't seen in a while. You and I are not wearing masks right now only because it's going to be easier to communicate, but we're 6 feet apart, so we're in good shape. So we can still care for each other. I guess one of the ways is this online stuff that we're doing,
which is outstanding. From our personal experience, we've had a couple of council Zoom meetings, and the Zoom meetings are actually they're a lot of fun. You get to see people in their home environment, which is interesting. I've met a cat and a dog.
Yes.
Almost got to see Pastor's dog the other day.
You heard her in the background.
It's really exciting. We had Bible study yesterday, which was fun. Had a little bit of a glitch, but it was fun. It was interesting. It was uplifting, and I think that the more that people get involved in those kind of things, because lots and lots of people can. I don't think there's any limit to the number, as far as I know. Is that correct, Pastor?
Well, the program that I have a paid program, for Zoom, and so we can have up to 100 people on one call. But I could do another call later on with a different 100 people.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yes.
So there's plenty of opportunity. I felt real uplifted as well, even though my camera wasn't working yesterday. I felt uplifted because of just seeing the faces. I mean, my heart just was gladdened,
Right.
with being able to see everybody on there, except for the few people who were still in their pajamas and didn't want to be seen. So,
but that's exciting. Even though we are all in this together, we're all, I guess, locked in our homes, if you will. People, for the most part, as far as I can tell, seem to be in good spirits.
Yeah.
And Pastor alluded to this just a minute ago. One of my big concerns, in something that I would do anything for, is somebody who did get a little bit depressed. Depression is a scary thing to me personally, and if I can do anything to help someone who is in that particular mode, I guess, I would do anything to help them. And I know Pastor obviously feels the same way. It's God is with us no matter what, and He will be with us. He has not forsaken us. He's not turned His back on us. That sometimes people get to feel that way because of this virus.
Right.
And it just, that's not the way it is. God wouldn't do that to us, no matter what.
Yeah, I agree. I think I had some notes that I wanted to try to finish up with, if I may. First of all, I noted that God has brought us through 27 years of being St. Andrew Lutheran Church in this location. The congregation built a sanctuary in '97. In 2010, we broke ground for the fellowship hall that we have. He has provided during this time when the unthinkable happened. No church services. I mean, if you had told me that 6 months ago, that we would over a week decide we're not going to have church service, and you and Carolyn and I would be greeting people on that Sunday morning. Yeah, it was March 15th, I think. And we were greeting people, and only about maybe 12 people stopped by because they didn't get the message we weren't having service. Was that weird?
Right.
I mean, that was the strangest thing,
I mean, it was almost like you were in a twilight zone.
Yeah.
It was so unreal.
Yeah.
and it unreal but real at the same time.
Sure. Yeah, I know we were experiencing it, you know. And so, well, we got through that, and here we are a number of weeks later, still making a lot of contacts, actually. You know, our staff is doing some calling for people in the church. Our telecare ministry is still hard at work, you know, calling people. We're still able to serve others. We haven't had to make any major changes in staffing at this point, and we're able to meet our obligations, you know, like the synod and so forth, because we support a lot of people.
Right.
I don't know if our congregation knows that, but we support tons of people all the time. We give generously to our synod, and they in turn give away 55% of everything they get to Churchwide, which also goes all over the world through the Lutheran World Federation. We feed millions of children and adults every single day, you know, every single day, even in this very difficult time. So, and that's only because of all the donations that folks bring to our church. You know, you continue with your offerings. That keeps all of us going. It's not just keeping the lights on here, which we don't have to keep them on too much anymore. It's not only that, but it's also who we serve out there. That's the important part of church work, the benevolence, you know,
Right.
that we're giving out there. And I thought I've got two scripture passages. Do you have those on your sheet
Yes.
at the end? I thought, would you read that? We want to finish up, I think, with Deuteronomy 1. Go ahead, and I'll.
The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And then from John chapter 14, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Well, those are good words, I think, to kind of end on. And I want to thank you, Mike, for spending the time here with us.
It's been my pleasure, Pastor.
Get to know you a little bit. And so everybody, may God bless you and continue to look to Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.